I love Pastor Chuck. He is so encouraging. He is so empowering. And I am very grateful to be here with you guys today. I want to say a special welcome to all of you who are online and those who are in the room. Just let the Lord speak to you today. Well, I love the outdoors. Absolutely love the outdoors. I love the feeling of fresh air. I love the sound of the wind as it goes through the tops of the trees. And I love the smell of nature in the mountains. I am an outdoors girl. Yet it's not enough for me to just say that I love the outdoors. I want to experience it to its fullest. So I want to make it to the top of the mountain. In rock climbing, I want to make it to the top of the rock. And I want to swim in the lakes and cross the rivers. But did you know the outdoors, it can kill you? You could get eaten by a bear. You could fall off the side of a cliff. You can get lost. All those things can happen. And I want to parallel this with the journey that we, those who have chosen to follow Christ, are on. You see, life can be so awesome, but we are vulnerable in our world today. We are vulnerable because Jesus never promises a safe journey in this life. This life can kill us. And if it doesn't kill us, we are promised that we will suffer. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing were happened to you, but rejoice to the extent that you partake in Christ's sufferings. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that one. Jesus writes, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So as we are vulnerable in this world, we're made to want to engage, explore, and experience all life has to offer. But we have to understand how to live in it. So welcome to the new sermon series, the 7 questions that Jesus asked. Jesus asked 307 questions throughout the Gospels, and we're going to be exploring those. But why does Jesus ask us questions? To give us little breadcrumbs along the journey? To give us clues on how to live, to challenge us, to confront us? Well, we're going to be exploring this because questions are the way that the rabbis taught. When you're asking questions, the truth sinks deeper. It's the difference between saying something or hearing something and then actually experiencing it for yourself. This is the way of the Jewish people. For us, we live in a world where we want to problem solve and have a concrete answer for everything. I love concreteness. It makes me feel safe, secure. Yet in contrast, in the Near East culture, to learn why was not to observe to fix, but to observe to ask questions. We even sugarcoat asking questions. No question is a dumb question because we are so fixated on finding the answer. The Jewish culture is okay with ongoing ambiguity and questions and discussion. This is a quote from a rabbi today when asked, why ask questions as a method of teaching? He says, because we believe that intelligence is God's greatest gift. We understand that God made man in his image, after his likeness, to mean that God gave us the ability to understand and discern. Let's look at kids today. How do they learn best? They have to be able to ask questions, right? Research shows that kids ask questions to understand their world around them. They ask questions in order to explore their imagination and what the possibilities might be like. Isidore Rabi, winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics, was once asked why he became a scientist. He replied, "My mother made me a scientist without ever knowing it." Every other child would have come back from school and be asked, "What did you learn today?" Parents in the room, parents online, you can probably resonate. You maybe even asked that question last week. But my mother used to ask, "Izzy, did you ask a good question today?" That made the difference. And so Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks concludes with, those who are confident in their faith fear no question. This is what our kids' winter camp 2 weeks ago was all about. A place for kids to ask questions and feel heard. We had some opportunities for kids to write questions on these huge, giant question marks in the room. And they would write down, what are their real questions about God and Adam and Eve and Genesis and how everything worked? And those questions were heard throughout the weekend, and we addressed their questions, sometimes with more questions, in their small group time, in their response time. And the questions Jesus asked were intentional to help move us to understanding, to prepare us for this journey that we're on. When I was in my late 20s, I met some friends who were into backpacking. They would go hiking all the time, and they enjoyed the outdoors, and I wanted in. You know, I had been hiking here and there with my family growing up, but having a group of friends to do this sounded amazing. So this group had done half of the John Muir Trail the previous summer. The John Muir Trail is a 220-mile stretch of trail that starts in the north all the way in Yosemite, and it goes south through the high Sierras all the way down to Mount Whitney in Lone Pine. Very long trail. So the next summer, they wanted to complete it. In other words, they wanted to hike the northern part. They wanted to start in Mammoth and go north and hike 80 miles up to Yosemite, ending on Half Dome. 80 miles in 8 days. Do the quick math. That is 10 miles a day from Mammoth Lakes all the way up there. So this is a huge hike, something for an actual hiker. Side note, when I was dating, I would go on people's online profiles, and they would have checked the box that said hiker. And I came to find out that their definition of hiker was vastly different than my definition of hiker. In fact, I saw a lot of outdoor activities checked on those online profiles, rollerblading, kayaking, and I came to learn that all of those things, their idea was vastly different than mine. So I went out on a few dates with a few of these guys, and we'd get about a mile or two into whatever our activity was, and I would start to hear questions like, hey, do you want to take a break? Are you getting hungry? You want a little snack? I'm looking at my watch going, it's only been like 15 minutes. We barely got started. And then what was worse, I would look over them, and there would be like a lot of sweat pouring down and like a lot of heavy breathing for where I thought we were on our journey. They weren't actually hikers. They just checked the box. They really didn't do what they said. So they are capping, or that's cap, which means in Gen Z, they're lying. They're not doing what they said they would do. This concept is the same with our faith. If we call ourselves Christians, if we bear the name, why don't we live it out in our life and in our everyday choices? So here is our question for today. Are you ready for it? So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? Imagine with me that Jesus is asking us this question today. We're with him, we're listening to him preach, and he turns to you and he says these words directly. So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? What would you say to Jesus in this moment? I know I have a few responses I thought of, but you've heard him confront the religious leaders. You've heard him say things that are really difficult, like love your enemies just before this. Before you respond to what you might say, let's clarify. He's asking us, in its simplest form, why are you not practicing what you preach? Why are you saying one thing, checking a box, but your actions are different? My first response is, these are the things that just naturally came up in my mind. If Jesus were to ask me these questions, I do what you say, Lord. I have been following you. I am following you. I call this the defensive response. I also thought of this one. Here are the things and the reasons why I am doing what you say. In fact, I made a list for you, Lord. Here you go. I call this the prove it response. Lord, can you please give me an example of what you're referring to? I think I need more information. I call this the I need more information response. And lastly, Lord, I can explain. You see, here's why. This is the I can explain response. But what if Jesus' question was not to make us feel defensive or to feel judged? What if his question was to lead us to experience life more to the full right here, right now, according to his plan? I want to go a little deeper, so I'm going to read the question and then what follows. So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and then follows it. It is like a person building a house who digs deep and lays the foundation on solid rock. When the floodwaters rise and break against the house, it stands firm because it is well built. But anyone who hears and doesn't obey is like a person who builds a house right on the ground without a foundation. When the floods sweep down against that house, it will collapse into a heap of ruins. Jesus presents a picture of two people who build homes. When the storm comes, one house collapses and the other stands firm. What separates this wise or the first person from the foolish or the second person? The answer is in verse 47. I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and then follows it. So our first person comes to Jesus and hears his teaching, does what Jesus says. Our second person comes to Jesus, hears his teaching, does not do what Jesus says. I believe that what distinguishes these two characters then is not that one is a Christian or a Christ follower and one is not. There is some truth to the foolish person representing all non-Christians, as it is the foolish man who says in his heart, there is no God. But in this passage, I believe both characters are believers, people who have said, Lord, Lord, I want to follow you. The difference between the two is in how they follow Jesus. Last Sunday, Pastor Chuck preached about the word Lord and the true definition of that meaning, that ultimate reverence and loyalty and authority. So let's figure out what this passage is talking about with regard to Christ followers doing what he says. So Jesus was talking to people in Israel, and we often think of this passage as a beach scene. I mean, I've pictured my whole life this scene as a beach with the house on the sand and then on a cliff with the house next to the cliff. Look at that right there. I mean, next to the ocean, Laguna Beach. Come on, it's not hard to decide I would want my house up on the cliff, not on the sand. But now let's look at what Rabbi Jesus was really referring to in that time. Remember, he used what was around the people. He pointed to things and he used them as illustrations. This was not written to us Americans, right? Or to a Western audience at the beach. So we have to insert ourselves into the scripture. So this may not be the exact location, but this is a great idea of what Jesus was talking about. This is modern day Qumran, right here. And these rock formations are called wadi. And the houses were built up at the top. I had never seen this image before as to what Jesus was actually talking about in this story. This place is close to the Dead Sea. It's clearly in the desert, and flash floods are possible. You would look at this and think, it doesn't really look like it rains much with all that desert and dryness. But if you were to walk through the wadi today or take a car ride through, you could actually see the water lines up on the cliff. When a flash flood comes, where would you want your house? And what would it take to build your house up on the very top? A lot of hard work. I can't even imagine how they got their houses built up there 2,000 years ago. But it was worth it because when the flash floods came, they would be safe. Luke writes the same principle about counting the cost of followership. Jesus says, but don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin the construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if he had enough money to finish it? Jesus is pretty direct here. He's saying, don't say you're a believer unless you think about what it takes to live like a believer and you're willing to lead your life in such a way. Don't make that walk forward at the end of the service. Don't pray that prayer until you've actually thought through and planned in your heart and your mind, your energy, your soul to say, I will live my life for Jesus once I make this decision, because I am that sure how much effort will go into living my life according to his ways. Luke is asking today, are you willing to plan ahead and discipline yourself in order to say, Lord, Lord, I will do what you say? Okay, back to 2008 with my backpacking friends, I said an easy yes to this 80-mile adventure. Remember, I wanted to experience the outdoors, not just say I was a backpacker, and I wanted to experience it more intensely than I ever had up to that point in my life and live out my passion. But you can't just be a through backpacker by saying it. You have to prepare and train to become this. So first is the backpack. You have to actually figure out how to pack it. You put all your sleeping stuff on the bottom, your bear can with your food in the center where the preponderance of your weight is, then you pack your soft layers around the outside, your water on the sides and on the back, you know, just a normal 35-pound pack today. Then how to get it on. You have to learn how to get it on. So you balance it on one leg, wrap it around, let it on, get the arms through, and then you want all your weight right on your hips, because that is where you carry it. Then you get it all tightened, buckled, load lifters pulled, and you're ready to go. Thank you. Not even talking about how to step, how to use your hiking poles, what layers to wear, what food to eat in order to be full of energy, electrolytes, you know, all the details. And then you gotta go out and train. You can't just put the back on, you gotta do some training. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I had to listen to my friends. I had to understand what they were telling me in regards to backpacking. It wasn't enough for them to just verbalize, just do this, Lauren. I had to do what they said. So all this for months, just to get ready for what was to come. Let's go back to our question. So why do you call me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? Why do you call me Lord, Lord, if you don't train in your daily life? Yeah, you would take a bullet for your spouse or your best friend. That's not a hard ask. But what about doing the dishes every night? What about dropping all of your well-laid plans to be there for your friend who needs you? There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. This is training. Will you choose not to outburst in anger when it feels really, really good to rise to that? You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. This is training. It's a Friday night and you're going out. Are you going to choose not to get drunk even though you don't want to miss out, you just want to have a little fun? Don't be drunk, because this will ruin your life. Instead, be filled with the Holy Spirit. This is training. Maybe you stopped doing Christian things like giving your money back to God, serving, giving of your time, even regular church attendance. You just like, whatever, I'll go here and there, because you're not getting out of it what you thought you deserved. You want something, you're not getting it, so you're not doing the hard thing. Jesus says, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. Doing the hard things and not seeing the results, this is training. So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? Do you feel that conflict in your inner self? Are you beginning to understand what Jesus is talking about here? Are you getting a glimpse of the fact that he wants you to have an amazing life right here, right now, doing all the things that he says? So back to what I was being invited into. When we started our 8-day hike, I remember feeling that first day like, there's no way out. I have to walk forward. I mean, yeah, there's emergency points of exit at some point, but I have to just keep going. Kind of felt claustrophobic, like I have to finish what I started. I have to get on this trail and keep going no matter what. And I have to do what my teammates say. If Mark, our map holder, said, we need to turn this way in the road, I would say, okay, I'm turning that way. If Andy, our gear guy, said, your poles are wrong, you're stepping incorrectly, I'd be like, okay, Andy, tell me what to do. If Nikki, our nurse, said, Lauren, you really got to get more electrolytes in you, I would listen and do what she said. And if Lena, our camp girl, said, go pump water, I would say, yes, and how much water should I pump, Lena? It wasn't just about obedience, but why I did what they said. I truly didn't think I knew better. I wasn't a through backpacker. Rather, I trusted that they knew more than me. I was at the place of, I know nothing. This is dangerous. I know there is risk. They had my best interest in mind. They wanted me to experience the fullness of it. And they wanted us to be prepared if the weather turned, if somebody got hurt. They wanted our team to succeed. So I trusted them implicitly. This is humility and knowing my place. And this is why we call him Lord, Lord, and do not do what he says. We don't trust that God knows better than me and has my best interest in mind. When he says, lay down your life for your friends, honor your spouse above yourself, give the first 10% of your income to me, make sure that your relationships are with other believers, especially those who you are dating. What do we do in response? We go, why? Why? Can you give me a good reason? We justify our actions. We think we know better than you, God, so just watch me. Watch how this works out. We want to hold on to what we think is important, including our grudges, because we think that we know better. And we don't even ask God. We got this. We don't even ask him. Because we think we know better. We have not fully surrendered to Lord, Lord, I will do what you say no matter what. When I was at a former job, I had a strong boss. One who was authoritative and domineering, one who said, this is my way, and asked me to prove things. I had already been there for 15 years by the time he became my boss, so I knew how to navigate programs and projects and all the things that came along my path. So having his line of questioning was tough. I started with things like, hey, can you help me understand where your team was yesterday when they weren't in the office sitting down working on their computers? So I would explain, yeah, we were off-site doing all this organizing and preparing and all this like really effective stuff. And then it kind of shifted to things like, can you please evaluate your staffing structure and compare it to other organizations? Which was code for, you're gonna lose staff soon, so get ready for that ball to drop. Ugh. And then there was a point in our working relationship where it became personal. By this time, he had been my supervisor for 2 years, and we had rounded a corner. There was something in me that caused him to react, and our meetings became really hard. There were times when he got angry with me and his veins would stick out in his throat, which is a clear sign of anger. We would sit in his office and he had this little round table. And I would wear something that I could grab under the table to try and hold my anxiety back as we met together. I tried my best not to let it out, but it got so bad. I went to my boss's boss for help because HR was connected with my boss, and so I had no recourse there. So my boss's boss listened. He was great. And he said, I'm gonna give you counseling. I said, I'll take it. I'll do anything it takes. Mind you, I was going to counseling, not my boss. And then it got worse. There were 2 staff members on my team who were in direct conflict with one another. And on a Saturday morning, secretly without me knowing, my boss met with my entire team without me present. I got put on a leave of absence for a week after that. I was devastated. I wasn't given the opportunity to speak up, to be part of the solution. I wanted to run away and fast. I wanted to get a job somewhere else, anywhere else. The Lord was very clear with me that I needed to stay. I had no blessings in staying. I couldn't see him work. I couldn't feel his presence. But leaving would have been going against God and his ways. Keep in mind, I was not in physical danger. If you're in a relationship right now that's physically abusive, get out. This was not the case with me. I stayed because I felt God had asked me to do the hard thing. And I was willing to say, Lord, Lord, I will do it because I love you, not because I see any positive. I felt helpless. I felt undefended. I felt traumatized. This was a year of Lord, Lord, you know better than me, and I will trust you. As I went to therapy, I felt the kindness of God because my therapist, he was so gracious. I'd had 2 other previous counseling experiences, and this one was different. He read my life like a story. He saw me, and he spoke words into me I had never heard before. He worked with me on what was inside of me that needed to change in order to handle authoritative men in my life. He actually helped me redefine my picture of men and fix some of those fallacies I had believed. After months of meeting with the counselor, I was able to meet with my boss, my boss's boss, and the counselor, all of us together. Not awkward at all, right? But we had a new start. It was not perfect after that, but it was better. I gained so much wisdom and a true understanding of myself, and I was able to invite my boss into the questions, and I was able to find out his strengths and he mine. I didn't run, even when I didn't have a why. I showed up every single day when it was hard. I had people offer me jobs during that time, and it was tempting. I had people around me say, you don't deserve this, Lauren. You should go and get out of this situation. You deserve better. This is not for you. I had other people voicing that, but I believe that God knew something that I didn't, and I chose to trust him. I don't know what God is asking you today. He may not be asking you to stay. I don't know your situation, but listen to Jesus and do what he says. This is complete trust. The Apostle Matthew writes, don't look for shortcuts to God. The market is flooded with surefire, easygoing formulas for a successful life that can be practiced in your spare time. Don't fall for that stuff, even though crowds of people do. The way to life to God is vigorous and requires total attention. This passage clearly says that one benefit of the hard way, embracing the struggle, is life. What is this abundant life that he is talking about? What do we get here for saying, Lord, Lord, I want to do what you say, and following through? We have a guide in life who knows where he is going and where you're supposed to go. We have the freedom to look around and enjoy life, knowing that things are taken care of. We have the benefit of being taken care of. We know that when hard times come, that care is tangible, and we know that we will have a peace because he promises to be with us. I want to show you a video in Qumran, real footage from the Wadi. When the floods come, like these real floods, where will your home be? On the sand, doing things your own way because you think you know better? Or on the rock, training and doing hard things? It is like a person building a house who digs deep and lays that foundation on solid rock. When the floodwaters rise and break against the house, it stands firm because it is well built. What would it look like today if every single person said, Lord, Lord, I will do what you say? Can you imagine our relationships and our marriages, what our society, our culture would be turned into if we heard his voice, listened, and did it? Can you imagine what our church would look like if everybody said, yes, yes, I don't just want to call you Lord, I want to do what you say. So I finished my 80-mile hike. Praise the Lord. It was awesome. Yay. We all had to do the daily grind, right? And face some hard things in order to enjoy it. And there was both things. There was hard things and there was beauty all around. You know, I had 8 blisters after day 2. And that's painful. Your feet feel like stumps. I can kind of feel them now even. But I walked through that. We even had to chase a bear away who stole some of our stuff. True story. And all of that to see some of the most beauty I had ever seen on a hike. Things you cannot see if you take a car, right? Because we were in the mountains. We had to hike to do the hard thing, to see the beauty all around. It didn't just happen by checking the box to say that we were backpackers and we saw a photo of it online. Do you want to enjoy the beauty of life right here, right now? Are you tired of trying your own way? Do you need to surrender maybe all or a piece of yourself, realizing that he is God and you are not, and you can trust him? Jesus didn't ask this question to everyone, remember. He asked it to a certain group of people, those who had called him Lord, Lord. Those who had said, yes, I want to follow you. I believe in you. So Jesus is asking you, those of you who have called him Lord, Lord, Jesus is asking you today, where do you need to follow me wholeheartedly? What needs to change inside of you in order to live a life fully surrendered to me?